He had just $10 left to his name, and with 2 hungry kids waiting at home, everyone expected him to buy bread. But instead, he walked out of that store with something no one saw coming, something that would unravel secrets buried in the past and set off a chain of events that would change all their lives forever. Before we dive into the story, make sure to hit subscribe button and like the video, and tell us in the comments where are you watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The grocery store lights hummed like old bees, and Aaron Steele stared at the handful of wrinkled bills in his palm. $10, all he had left until Friday's paycheck, and that was already promised to rent, daycare, and a car that coughed like a lifelong smoker. His daughter, Lucy, tugged his sleeve with sticky fingers, clutching a paper heart she'd cut at school. His son, Ben, stood beside the cart, quiet, watching the way his dad's jaw flexed each time he did the math and lost. "We can get bread," Ben whispered, "or we can get the flowers." Aaron looked at the thin loaf under the cart rack and then up at the grocery flower stall where small bouquets leaned toward the fluorescent light like they were trying to escape. It was Rachel's birthday, their first without her. Lucy had insisted on making a card with glitter that had already colonized the back seat. Ben had not insisted on anything. Ben had learned to keep his insisting to himself. "She liked the yellow kind," Lucy said, pointing at the daisies. "The bright ones that looked like little suns." Aaron swallowed. He imagined the small granite marker at Rose Hill Cemetery, the way the winter grass had begun to go green around it, the way the kids traced the letters in her name as if they could teach the stone to talk. He pulled a bouquet from the bucket, checked the tag, and felt the tightness in his chest when it said $9.99. As if the world had chosen that price to be cruel and exact. "We'll get them," he said. Lucy beamed. Ben's shoulders dropped a little. Relief or worry? Aaron couldn't tell. At the checkout, the cashier paused when she saw the kids' faces and the flowers. She bagged the bread and eggs, then wrapped the daisies in an extra layer of paper without charging. Aaron nodded thanks. He didn't know how to speak aloud. Outside, the sky looked like a pale sheet pinned by a sun that couldn't quite do its job. The wind lifted Lucy's hair like a hand. They drove to Rose Hill with the bouquet on Ben's lap. Lucy sang a song about pancakes to keep from crying. Aaron parked under a maple that would be red in a few months and brave now with early leaves. The kids walked the path like they knew it better than the hallway to their own bedrooms. Aaron knelt to trim the grass that had pushed up around the edges of Rachel's stone. He set the daisies down, and for a second, the color made the gray look softer, like the world had remembered how to breathe. "Hi, Mom," Lucy said, and placed her paper heart on the stone. Ben stood with his hands in his jacket pocket, eyes on his shoes. Aaron told Rachel about the dishwasher he'd finally figured out, and the way Lucy's teacher said she was a storyteller, and the way Ben had taught himself to tie his shoes, double knot, so they wouldn't come undone during dodgeball. None of it made the air warmer, but it made standing there feel like more than standing there. When they turned to leave, a gust sent the paper heart skittering. Lucy chased it, laughing, and the heart lodged under a small metal sign near the gate. "Local Flower Farm Market, today, 2 to 6 p.m., downtown square." Lucy stuck the heart back into her jacket, eyes bright. "More flowers," she said. "Mom would like that." "We're not buying more," Ben said, practical the way kids get when they've learned the numbers beat the wishes. But Aaron felt something nudge him. Maybe it was the sign, or the way the bouquet had brightened the stone, or the hollow feeling after you do the one thing you can do and still need to do something more. He drove to the square, intending only to walk through. The market was small, a mix of stalls with jars of honey and hand-lettered chalkboards. The flower booth was impossible to miss. A canvas canopy, buckets of ranunculus and peonies and wildflower bundles that looked like they'd been gathered by someone who apologized to each stem as they cut it. A woman stood behind the table, sleeves rolled, fingers stained green. She was laughing with an older man about the correct name for a certain kind of eucalyptus, and the laugh was enough to reach across years and bruise Aaron's ribs with memory. "Nora?" he said, too soft for her to hear. Nora Williams had been Rachel's best friend in college, the maid of honor who'd cried through the vows and danced in bare feet. After the accident, she sent a message, then another. Then Aaron stopped answering because every reply felt like opening a window in a snowstorm. Months passed, and silence hardened into a habit. Now she stood 6 feet away, holding a bunch of tulips, sun in her hair, a small scar near her eyebrow he didn't remember. Lucy reached the table first. "My mom liked the yellow ones," she announced. "We brought some to her rock." Nora bent to Lucy's height without looking away from her face. "The best rocks hold names we love," she said gently. "I bet she saw those daisies from wherever she is." She glanced up, eyes finding Aaron, and the space between them filled with the years he'd refused to count. "Hey," she said, waiting. Aaron swallowed, then stepped closer, telling himself the ground would hold. "Hey," he said back, voice thinner than he meant. "We were just passing through." He gestured at the buckets. "Your stand looks good." "Thank you," Nora said, and for a second her smile was careful, like a bookmark held between 2 pages you are not sure you want to keep reading. Then Lucy tugged her sleeve. "Do you remember me?" Lucy asked. "I'm Lucy. Mom had pictures of you. You wore shiny shoes at the wedding, and you did a funny dance." Nora's eyes softened. "I remember you, Lucy, and you must be Ben." He gave a shy nod. Nora reached for the daisies in Lucy's hand. "These are perfect. Did you choose them?" "They were the yellow kind," Lucy said. "We took them to Mom's rock." Nora looked at Aaron, and her voice turned gentle in the way people use only when they are looking straight at the ache. "How are you holding up?" "Like a chair with one wobbly leg," he said, and winced at his own honesty. "We're learning. Some days are okay, some are not." "That sounds true," she said, and heavy. Silence pressed in. Market chatter carried like soft radio. A dog barked at a soap display. The older man asked if the eucalyptus was pronounced with a long U, or if that was just him being dramatic. Nora tore a small slip of brown paper, wrote something on it, and tied it to a jar of honey, as if to give her hands a job, while her mind searched for a bridge. "I'm sorry, I stopped answering," Aaron said at last. "I didn't know how to talk to anyone who knew her as well as I did." Every word felt like breaking open. "I know," Nora said. "I kept writing anyway for a while. Then I didn't know what would help, so I grew quiet too." She tapped the table edge. "Grief is a poor communicator." Lucy pointed at a bucket of lilacs. "Can we smell those?" "Yes, ma'am," Nora said, lifting the bucket so both kids could lean in. If spring had a voice, it would smell like this. Ben glanced at Aaron, then at the small chalkboard that said, "Lilac bundles, $12. His mouth tightened. Aaron saw it and felt the old heat of shame crawl up his neck. "We can look, not buy," Aaron said softly. "Today our budget is already spent." "You bought flowers anyway," Nora said, noticing the grocery paper around the daisies. "It was Rachel's birthday," he said. "I had $10. It seemed like the right way to use them." Nora's breath hitched, almost a laugh and almost a sob. She would have wanted that. She loved when you did impractical things with perfect timing. She reached under the table, pulled out a short, slightly wild bouquet with pale roses and bits of green that looked like they had been gathered from the edge of a morning. She set it in front of Lucy. "This one is for your kitchen table," she said. "No charge. It is a market rule I just made up." Ben opened his mouth to protest. "We can't." "We can," Aaron said, catching Nora's eyes. "We can say thank you." "Thank you," Lucy said, petting the petals like a small cat. Nora glanced down the street, then back. "I started the farm last year," she said. "After my city job chewed through my nerves. Rachel and I talked about it once, on a night when we promised to be brave. I was brave late. I wish I had told her I finally did it." "She would be proud," Aaron said, and meant it so fully that for a second he forgot how to breathe. A woman approached wanting peonies for an anniversary. Nora worked fast, hands sure, wrapping stems in tissue, tying ribbon into a neat bow, making space for the woman to tell a quick story about 23 years and an old pickup truck that still ran. When the woman left, Nora wiped water rings from the table with a cloth and looked at the kids again. "We do a Saturday morning workshop for families," she said. "We teach about soil and seeds and how flowers drink. You can take home a pot. It's messy and good. If you want to come, you'll be our guests. No cost. It helps me to see kids plant things." Ben tried to act bored and failed. "Can I plant a sunflower?" "You can plant 5, Nora said. "We will negotiate height goals with the sun." Aaron found himself smiling in a way that made his face feel unfamiliar. "We can come," he said. "I'm off Saturday." The older man from before shuffled back to ask about cash versus card. Nora answered, then leaned closer and kept her voice low. "I still have some of Rachel's boxes," she said. "Photos and a few things she left at my place after that last lake weekend. I never knew if you wanted them. I didn't want to push." "I didn't know they existed," Aaron said, a small shock running through him. "I thought we had gathered everything." "She called them the someday boxes," Nora said with a soft, crooked smile. "She said someday she would sort them and make an album and a plan. I think she liked having a someday." She did. Aaron watched the kids cradle their free bouquet like it might dissolve if they breathed too hard. The word someday echoed in him like a hallway after the door closes. "Could I see them sometime?" he asked quietly. "The boxes." "Of course," Nora said. "They're in my attic, which is less scary than it sounds now that I evicted the raccoon." She smiled faintly, then sobered. "No rush. Only if you want to. I think I want to," he said. "Maybe not today, but soon." They left the market just as the shadows were stretching long across the square. The kids sang along to an old pop song on the radio, while the flowers rested on Lucy's lap. At a stoplight, Aaron glanced in the mirror and caught her looking at them with a softness that hurt. She saw what he saw, something fragile and still alive. He tightened his grip on the wheel. That night, the house smelled of grilled cheese and dish soap. After the kids were in bed, Aaron stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing plates. The bouquet Nora had given them sat in a glass next to the toaster, turning the dim kitchen into something braver. He kept looking at it, like it might explain itself. He found himself thinking of Nora's laugh as she tied that ribbon, the way she crouched to Lucy's level without hesitation. How easily she fit where everything had felt like sharp corners for so long. He shut off the water before the thought finished forming. Saturday came like a small dare. The farm sat at the edge of town, past fields that flickered gold in the wind. The gravel driveway crackled under the tires. Nora stood by the barn, with her hair tied up and her jeans cuffed, waving with the easy grace of someone who belonged exactly where she was. A group of families milled near rows of raised beds, kids clutching tiny shovels like trophies. "You made it," she said, crouching to greet Lucy and Ben. Ready to get dirt under your nails? Lucy nodded fiercely. Ben squinted like he was sizing up the soil for competition. Nora led them to a table, stacked with small pots, seed packets, and watering cans. She moved between the children with practiced calm, explaining how roots reach down for strength before flowers reach up for light. Lucy planted marigolds, humming under her breath. Ben chose sunflowers, like he had been waiting all week to declare war on gravity. Aaron stood back, hands in his pockets, watching the way Nora guided their small hands. How she listened when they asked if worms liked music, or if seeds got scared in the dark. She answered like every question mattered. The barn door was open and smelled of hay and something sweet. Wind carried laughter across the beds like a low chord on a piano. Aaron felt the weight in his chest shift, not gone, but rearranged. After the workshop, Nora handed each kid a cardboard tray with their planted pots. Water them every morning, she said, and tell them good stories while they grow. They like encouragement. Lucy saluted. Ben nodded solemnly, as if accepting command of a secret mission. Can I show you the boxes? Nora asked Aaron quietly. The kids can see the ducklings while we look. Inside the farmhouse, the air was cooler, scented faintly of lavender and old wood. Nora led him up a narrow staircase to a small attic lined with neatly labeled bins. She pulled two toward them, each marked in Rachel's familiar loopy handwriting. Someday 1 and someday 2. The sight punched through him, clean and merciless. They sat cross-legged on the floor. Nora opened the first box. Inside were snapshots, some curling at the edges. Rachel laughing in a canoe. Rachel and Nora arm in arm at a concert. Rachel holding newborn Lucy, swaddled like a burrito. Beneath the photos lay notebooks full of half-written poems, a concert ticket stub, and a grocery list in her looping script that included milk, cinnamon, and make life beautiful. She wanted to build a flower wall in her backyard, Nora said, touching a sketch tucked between pages. We talked about it for hours. She made me promise I'd have fresh flowers at her funeral. I did. I don't think anyone noticed but me. She noticed, Aaron said, voice unsteady. She always noticed the quiet things. They opened the second box. It held small things with heavy gravity. A bracelet made of tiny silver stars. A letter addressed to herself about turning 40. A sealed envelope marked for someday, when the house feels whole again. Nora held it out. I think this was for you. Aaron turned it in his hands, the paper soft at the edges. I don't know if I'm ready. Then keep it until you are, she said. Someday isn't a deadline. It's permission. He nodded, slipped the envelope into his jacket pocket, and closed the box. Downstairs, Lucy and Ben knelt near a pen full of ducklings, their laughter thin and bright as glass bells. Aaron thanked Nora and drove the kids home as the sun sank low and the sky burned the color of old marigolds. The envelope pressed warm against his chest the whole way, like a second heartbeat. That night, after the kids were asleep, he sat at the kitchen table alone with the letter. The house was still, the hum of the refrigerator the only witness. He slid a finger under the flap. Inside, Rachel's handwriting looped like music. If you are reading this, I hope the house has laughter again. I hope you are not surviving, but living. If you are still standing in the ruins, plant something. It doesn't have to bloom yet. Just let it root. Someday you will too. Love always, R. Aaron pressed the letter to his chest and closed his eyes. He didn't cry. Not exactly. Something looser happened, like a knot unwinding after years of holding too tight. He whispered okay into the empty kitchen, and for the first time, the word felt true. Spring slid into summer quietly, the way a song changes keys without warning. The marigolds on the kitchen windowsill bloomed first, stubborn and bright, and Lucy named them after characters in the bedtime stories Aaron improvised. Ben's sunflowers lagged, all leaf and no flower, but every morning he checked their height with a ruler, muttering calculations like he was engineering a skyscraper. The house began to hum again, not loudly, but steadily, like something alive finding its rhythm. Nora visited one Saturday with more soil and a tray of seedlings. She stayed for grilled cheese, then stayed for stories, and eventually stayed for the kind of silence that isn't empty. She and Aaron talked on the porch while the kids drew chalk galaxies on the driveway. Their knees dusted blue and pink. They talked about Rachel, at first carefully and then not carefully, about who she had been, the way she loved fiercely and forgave slowly, how she made everyone believe things could be beautiful if you were just stubborn enough to keep trying. Every story hurt and healed at the same time, like setting a broken bone right. As weeks passed, Nora's name stopped being said like a visitor's. She came with wildflowers tucked behind her ear, with lemons from the farm, with laughter that curled into the corners of the house like light. She showed Ben how to braid garlic and Lucy how to press petals between wax paper. She showed Aaron nothing directly, but somehow his chest stopped feeling like a locked door every time she was near. Grief didn't vanish. It stayed, quiet and honest, but it stopped sitting in the driver's seat. One late afternoon, they all piled into the truck to drive out to the farm again. Nora had planned a small harvest dinner for the families who'd planted in the spring. Long tables stood under strings of lights, the air warm and golden. Lucy wore a crown of daisies. Ben carried a jar of marigold seeds like they were treasure. As the sun dipped low, kids chased fireflies, and grown-ups told stories that stretched and tangled like vines. Aaron wandered to the edge of the field, where the wildflowers grew unplanned, a mess of color bending toward the last light. Nora followed, her dress brushing the tops of the grass. "They didn't bloom perfectly," she said, nodding at the wild patch. "They just bloomed anyway." "I didn't think we would," he said. "You are," she said simply. She reached for his hand, and he let her. They stood quiet, shoulder to shoulder, as the field breathed around them. When they turned back, Lucy and Ben were sitting cross-legged on the table bench, arguing gently about which flower would win in a race. Their laughter carried through the warm dusk like something stitched back into the world. Later that night, after the kids had fallen asleep in the back seat on the drive home, Aaron parked in front of their house and didn't move for a while. The porch light glowed like an open invitation. He remembered Rachel's letter. "If you are still standing in the ruins, plant something." And he thought of the marigolds, the chalk galaxies, the sound of Lucy's giggle when Nora tickled her. The way Ben had rested his head against Nora's shoulder without realizing it. He thought of how loss had carved him hollow, and how somehow that hollowness had made room for new roots. Inside, he carried the kids to bed, pulled off their shoes, and tucked the blankets under their chins, the way Rachel used to. Downstairs, Nora set the small bouquet from the farm into a jar on the table. They stood on opposite sides of it for a moment, just looking at each other. There was no grand speech, no sudden declaration. Just something quiet passing between them, certain as gravity. "They're going to ask eventually," Aaron said, "if you're staying." "What will you tell them?" Nora asked. "That sometimes," he said slowly, "you spend your last $10 on flowers, and they lead you somewhere you didn't know you were missing." Nora smiled, and it reached her eyes like sunlight finally hitting the floor. She stepped closer, close enough for their shoulders to brush. "Then maybe I should stay." "Maybe you already do," he said. The house was still, wrapped in the faint smell of soil and wildflowers. Outside, fireflies blinked across the lawn like soft sparks. Aaron felt the weight he'd carried for so long settle into something else. Not gone, but part of the ground he stood on. Steadier now. He reached for her hand, and she let him, and in the quiet of that moment, the world seemed to breathe with them. Because sometimes what saves us isn't a plan, or a miracle, or the perfect answer. Sometimes it's the smallest choice made on the heaviest day. A handful of flowers, a soft laugh, a door left open, and the courage to believe that even broken soil can bloom again. In the end, a single act of love turned grief into growth, proving that even the smallest kindness can spark new beginnings in a broken world. So if this story moved you, like the video, subscribe for more heart-changing tales, and remember to share it to inspire someone who needs hope today.